So we just binged all of the Umbrella Academy season 2 on Netflix in one day, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Hi guys, my name is Maria Park, and this is Approach to Nerd. And in this episode, we are reviewing season 2 of the Umbrella Academy on Netflix. And joining me is my wonderful spouse, River Park, and we have a lot to talk about in terms of this season. Did enjoy the season. So, I have to say positive, negative, and then questions, of course, on everything I watch. And my spouse is the same, as you will learn. But overall, I love the Umbrella Academy season 1. And I really think season 2 was better than season 1. Just putting that out there. But now we're going to kind of move into our questions, positives, and negatives. I think we'll start with the positives. So, number 1 for me is that we got to see more of Pogo, because Pogo is my heart in this season. So we actually got an origin story. It was short. It was like a blimp in the beginning of an episode, but we got to see how Pogo came from Congo to, basically his entire line as, being a baby chimp to going into space. And then what happened after that. And I really, really, really love Pogo's character as a whole, my favorite character. On the flip side of that, which is a negative, I don't know what the heck happened to Pogo after Diego gets stabbed by his father. We saw Pogo with number 5. He scratched number 5 to get away from him. After the fight between Sir Reginald and Diego, where, he stabs Diego, you see Sir Reginald walking away. And then you see Pogo basically grab Sir Reginald's hand and then walks off. And then we never see him again. Where did Pogo go? If you remember something from this season that I missed, please tell me, because I want to know what happened to Pogo after that, because we never saw Pogo again, and it irritated me because, again, I love Pogo. So yeah, just throwing that out there. What was a positive for you?
The writing was really good. There was really good humorous dialogue and sequences, dynamics between the siblings, character development, representation of kind of diversities of all kinds, like LGBT relationships, were, I think,
there were
portrayed
2
in a very respectful, realistic way, not like other representations could be. For the beginning part, like for the beginning first several episodes, the Asian sibling
Ben,
who has already died, Ben, he's dead, so he's only a ghost. So he kind of gets that whole like Asian stereotypical, like you get the
token
really
character,
worst part of the show. You get the least, amount of time and least significant, but then in the end he shines. So
yeah,
I appreciate that as an Asian person.
I love the fact that Ben had more than 9 or 10 lines, because in season 1 he had hardly no lines at all, and in this one it was more Ben centric than I thought it would be. And going into potentially season 3 with the Sparrow Academy, he's number 1 now, so it's going to be very Ben centric. And he won't be a ghost, and he won't be sharing Klaus's body, which is flippin' hilarious. Him jumping into Klaus's body was flippin' hilarious. I did like the fact, though, that Ben actually got to lose his virginity. He got to experience things through Klaus that he normally wouldn't have been able to. And that he's the one that saves the world. Ben saves the world in the end. He's the one that leaps into Vanya's body and consoles her and sacrifices his ghost presence and basically ghost life to not only save his sister, but to save his siblings and the rest of the world. So Ben is like, he's the gold star of this episode, or this season, in my opinion. So very cool. I love that about Ben. And like you said, with the humor, they had so many jokes. Like, I love the Luke Skywalker reference. That was flippin' hilarious. Like the fact that Diego's in the asylum talking about, comparing himself to Luke Skywalker, and he's like, someday you'll know who that is. It's like, of course, they're in the 60s. But Yeah, there were so many jokes that I really, really liked in this that went over some of the people's in their time periods' heads. I love the fact that they were dropped. It's either between 1960 to 63 or 61 to 63. I know Allison was first. She didn't have her powers at the time when she first got to Dallas, Texas in the 60s, which was racist as hell. She had white men chasing her, which is completely historically accurate in the South. I love that they played on that. I love that she... Now, I will say this. I'm kind of torn about Allison in a way, and we'll get to that in a second. But she marries a guy named Raymond Chestnut. And historically, there is a civil rights activist named J.L. Chestnut from Alabama. And I often wondered while watching this, and I even had to Google it to make sure I was right, if that's who Raymond is supposed to be based off of, because it seems like everybody had a historical reference at some point in this. Like, number one, Luther was working for Jack Ruby, and Jack Ruby is the one who shoots Oswald. And they kept that because, with JK, with JFK being assassinated, there's a scene where you see Luther calling him at the end, and he has a gun. And I mean, that's what he does historically. He's the one that kills Oswald after Oswald shoots JFK. So I like the historical references that they're the ones closer to all the people that have an effect on JFK being assassinated, like as a whole, like so many different avenues in time. And we have the civil rights activists, we have the shady nightclub owner, we have, even down to the LGBT representation. As a queer woman in an LGBT marriage, like my spouse was saying, I like historically that we got an accurate view of what it would be like to be two women in love in the 60s, and also to have a man in love with a guy in a southern town when bigotry and racism is like rampant. Like what was his name? Jesse, or what was his... Why did it go out of my head? It's either Dave or Jesse. I cannot remember the guy that died in Vietnam that was Klaus's... Dave. I'm going to say, I think it's Dave, soulmate. But I'm going to say Dave's uncle. How he reacted is so historically accurate. Not only then, but actually a little bit here. We live in the South. So I can say that in some parts of the South, nothing has changed. But that to me, like just from that moment in time of, him hitting him and say, hit the queer, that is so historically accurate and so like personal that you can relate to it. And at the same time, Vanya being hit by a woman and her child. So Sissy and Harlan, the little boy, and Sissy and Vanya ending up being in a relationship, and how, Sissy, she basically felt trapped by her husband, Carl, whose brother's a state trooper, and she's in a boring, loveless marriage. She has a special needs son, and she's just trapped. And the idea of being happy with Vanya, even though she really wants it, she's got that whole, but we're two women and no one's going to accept that. And we live in the South. It's not normal. It's not society's norm, So she's got that, and she has to battle that. So everybody had like a battle in this. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, so let's talk about some more stuff. A negative. I did not like the Swede brothers. I felt like they were unnecessary. We had a lot of I'm going to say we had a lot of villains in this season, because it's true. We really did. We had the Handler. Mm-hmm. We had the Apocalypse. For a time, we kind of had the father. The siblings, dealing with each other, preventing things from actually being fixed. All of these things. And then, of course, Lila, which we'll talk about in a second. All of these things were already had a really big impact on the story. We did not need these three characters at all. They were so boring. Like, I loved Cha-Cha and Hazel. I loved them. I loved their dynamic. I love how they bantered with each other, the love-hate relationship they had for each other. When Hazel quote unquote betrayed Cha-Cha, you felt bad for Cha-Cha in a way, even though she was wrong, I didn't care about these three. They just did nothing. Like they did nothing. They
could have sent normal commission.
They could have sent anyone. They were like completely throwaway characters for me. So I didn't care about them. I felt like that they basically could have added something else in that space and that was just a waste of time. So and that's the problem that I had with this overall, is that there's a lot of exposition in places that didn't need to be, and characters that didn't really matter when they could have just like expanded it, especially the 12 episodes. I would have been happy for 12. But yeah, they weren't really necessary. I wish we had the battle from episode 1 and episode 10. That battle was endgame material right there. Them using their powers. I mean, Klaus throwing those ghosts out. Vanya levitating and using her abilities. I mean, everybody's just like on point. That was a cool flipping fight. So when we got to episode 10, it was lackluster as hell for me with just Lila, who basically we find out is a mirror, which I know you had a problem with Lila.
Because there was no build-up, like not enough enough reminders that she was going to be able to do all that, so that by the time she did all of it in episode 10, you had already been, a little bit reminded and a little bit prepared. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. The way it went down was just like, oh, she can do that now.
Yeah.
Oh, we're doing this. Oh, okay, Vanya, basically. Okay, Lila E, 5. Lila E, Luther. Like, it was just like...
Yeah. She was taking all their powers individually, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, there was no prep.
There was. Now, I will say they gave a hint in the warehouse scene, like when Luther knocks 5 through the wall, or he tries to, and he teleports to the wall, and he turns around and she's like walking in an alleyway. There's no way she could have got there that fast. So that was kind of an indication that she mirrored his teleportation ability. But we don't know that till later on. Like, I know they were trying to make this big revelation, but it wasn't. To me, it really wasn't.
And also, it's not a revelation anyway, because season 1, which we had to go back to and look at.
Oh, yeah. And they said this in the comics, too. There were 43 women who gave birth on the exact same day, but they weren't pregnant at the beginning of the day. And they all had, babies that either had really phenomenal abilities or powers. I guess, and that's probably another question more than a negative, or maybe both. When they're all talking about Lila, 2 things happened that didn't make sense to me. Number 1, Diego just instantly said, "You were born on the same day as us in October of 1989. I'm like, how do you know that? At what point in their relationship or anywhere in this season did she tell you when her birthday was? I don't recall this. If you remember this, guys, please tell us, because I do not remember them saying, oh yeah, by the way, we have the same birthday. That was weird. And then the way Vanya and them were talking, saying, well, could there be others like us? Yes, 43 women gave birth with children with powers and abilities. So yes, there are plenty of others out there. They act like this is not something they already knew. And I don't know why.
They didn't recap. That was not part of the recap either, that I remember from season 2 recap. So if it wasn't there, please also remind me in the comments below that it actually was.
Yeah.
But
having known the story, even seeing season 1, in the opening scene, it tells you that there were 43 women. 43 does not equal 7 kids. Mm-hmm. So, of course, there are many. I guess that kind of rubbed me wrong. It's like, are you expecting us to not remember what happened in season 1? Because that kind of bothered me a little bit. That's more the writing, though. Again, I love the acting. I loved, most of this was amazing. It's just I have to nitpick on these things because there are questions. And we have more. Because, number 5, Luther's twin, who has no name, or they can't remember his name because it's been so long, and we don't remember his name because we just don't, and I don't think they ever mentioned his name in the comics. I have questions on how he handled all of this. He's supposed to be the smartest Hargreaves sibling of all of them, but he acted very challenged in this season. Number 1, okay, this is a question that I have, and this is a broad question. If you decide to go to 1982 to the board of directors or whatever meeting to assassinate them for the Handler, but you've already said and determined that you have problems traveling through time, pinpoint. Number 1, how did you make it there at the exact time you needed to be there, at the exact place, in 1982, but you can't go back to 2019. And now hear me out. You can't teleport to 2019 or 2018, go into the commission where you used to work, get a briefcase, come back, get your siblings, and get the hell out. Or even still, instead of assassinating the board of directors, teleport into the board of directors, say, hey, the handler sent me to kill you, but I think you guys could help me out. Me and my siblings are about to cause another apocalypse in 1963. I know you don't want to do that because you preserve the timeline and basically you won't be here. So how about you help us get the heck out of Dodge, saving us, bam, end of the apocalypse.
And AJ already didn't like Handler.
And AJ didn't like Handler either. So what in the beepity beep beep was he doing? Like, what was he doing? And this is my problem when we deal with timelines. It's just like the TV series The Flash, or even the comic book for Flashpoint, Back to the Future, which is still one of the best time traveling movies ever. So many traveling multiverse. Will get me started with Crisis on Infinite Poop. So many time traveling experiences. And there's always huge plot holes. Hell, Doctor Who has probably the biggest plot hole of all. But and I love Doctor Who, but there's lots of plot holes in every series of Doctor Who, especially the latest ones. But it just whenever you deal with the multiverse and timelines and time travel, it's so effing tricky, and you end up either contradicting yourself or just writing your characters as stupid. And I guess that's another problem that I had.
This was an easy one to not.
Yeah, there are multiple occasions. I mean, heck, even Diego is with this character named Lila, who we later find out is actually the adopted daughter of the handler, who is also just like them. We learned that in episode 10. She has the ability to mirror abilities, but they didn't know that going in. So early on, she takes a liking to Diego because her mother, the handler, assigned her to be close to him, to protect Five, because of course she wanted Five to assassinate the board. So it's all this crazy, intricate, sneaky, manipulative plan that the handler had. But Lila develops feelings for Diego and takes Diego to the commission and tries to recruit him since she's made head of security. And my problem is this, and I know a lot of YouTubers do this. I'm sure you do this with mine. Heck, you might even do it with this episode. You literally will watch something for 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 2 minutes, decide either you don't like what is being said, it's boring, blah, 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 and you move on. Well, see, Diego does this in his orientation. Instead of watching the full video on what every department does, where he can actually say in his head, hey, this department is where you get the briefcases. And if I get one of those briefcases, I can go to my siblings and I can get us the hell out. That's not even a concept to him. No, instead, he watches 2 seconds of the video, decides that, the infinite, what do we call it? Infinity switchboard. That's what I'm calling it. I can't remember what they referred to it as. But he decided he was going to that room because that's where all the timeline hub stuff happens, and not know how to operate the flipping thing because you didn't watch the video even for that. He gets, I believe his name was Drew, the little short agent. It may be, for now it's Drew, gets him to do a search for him to look at JFK, and that's where he sees the federal or FBI building explode and sees Vanya literally floating out of it, and he's like, oh crap, well Vanya's starting the end of the world, so we need to go and stop it. So he has Drew take him back with, of course, a suitcase because he can't get there by himself, and instead of going back in time, because they couldn't have gone anywhere in time because they're a time bureau. He could have gone back to the day they were all sitting around the table talking about what they should do. But no, he goes back where he's like, I got an hour to go and save my sister. And I'm like, they are not trying, guys. They aren't trying. They're not trying. They're not trying.
They're trying for a season 3.
That's what it was. They're like, if we stop now with this silliness, we won't have season 3, and yeah, we will have to have 2 episodes. Because really, this whole season could have been done in 2 episodes. All right, so I had to put that out there. I mean, just let me know in the comments if you thought that was weird, because I did. I'm sorry, I'm going to call it out. So back to Allison. So Allison, she gets her voice back. We don't know how, and we were talking about this. How did she discover she had her powers? Because she decided not to use them and live her life with honor and dignity, like what her husband's motto is, because, he's a civil rights activist. Which is there's nothing wrong with that. That's completely respectable, though in those days, you need every advantage you can get when you're black in the 60s in the South, but, it is what it is. But I don't know how she knew how to get her powers back. But she has completely resigned herself to this life. And when I say resigned, she seemed to be extremely happy Even when she finds Klaus, there's no indication of, oh, I'm going to go with my brother. We need to find the rest. If you survive, that means everybody else has survived. Maybe we can go home. And I can see my daughter, Claire. She does not mention her daughter except twice. And it's near the end when Luther is trying to convince her to leave her husband. And she says, oh, do you think I can see Claire again? And I'm like, wow, you finally remembered your kid. You know?
It was so bad, I'd forgotten she had a daughter until she mentioned it. So I don't remember anything from season 1. So, like, to leave that out for an entire season and then bring it up at the very end, because whatever.
I mean, because they had to move the plot forward to get her to go home. But even then, she was still struggling. She was still struggling, though, right? Mm-hmm. I mean,
even at the very end,
yeah.
Luther was like, "Have another drink." She's like, "Ah."
Yeah, she's like, "I need to go find Claire. I'll have another drink first." I'm like, "Well, really? Okay." And she was going. I'm like, "All right, you right now, Allison, you are Mother of the Year." I'm just saying. And the reason I thought that was so interesting is we had this mother who's supposed to love her kids so much and barely talks about her, remembers her, or even reacts about her. Mm-hmm. And then we have the opposite with Sissy and Harlan, because her son is has special needs, and she like even tries to kill her husband when he tries to take her. So it's like extreme overprotective mother and good mother. And then you have Allison, who's like, yeah, I got this kid, but I mean, have you seen my man? Like, it's so weird. It's
like the movement is their child.
Yeah.
It's her new child that lets her forget that she has an actual physical human child.
And she even said that she was happy and doing well and living in southern, Chicago or southern Dallas, and didn't want to go. And I'm like, okay. So that,
I hate to be Claire.
I mean, poor Claire. Like, I feel really bad. So yeah, I was so sad about Hazel dying. Hazel is such an adorable character. He died so early on too.
Too soon.
And to add on to that, we learned that Agnes, the woman that he ends up marrying, the waitress from season 1, died of cancer after 20 years of them being together. And it's just, so his whole, like, it just seems like he had a moment of good luck, but everything else was just crap. And I just felt so bad for Hazel. I really did. But yeah. And of course, the Swede brothers killed Hazel, and that irritated me because, again, they were throwaway characters. They should not have been there. So yeah, that was interesting. The AJ character, though, with a fishbowl, that was interesting and kind of cool. I mean, a fishbowl body, or a fishbowl head with a body
that smokes.
Yeah, that smokes. That was. I mean, the handler did eat him, so I don't know if there's a way to come back from that. But hey, you never know. I mean, we thought she was dead, and she popped up in the beginning of season 2 after being shot in the head. So apparently, her metal plate saved her because she had to come back somehow. That whole thing about her wanting to find children with abilities, and that's why she got Lila and basically forged to have her family killed to get her. That was really messed up. And what I don't understand is she finds out about Harlan, and she wants to go get Harlan because, there's this awesome scene where Vanya saves him, little Harlan, from drowning after he falls into a lake by making all of the water in the lake float all the way up in the air. And she just basically walks in and picks him up and pulls him out. And then she brings him back to life. He literally is dead, and she breathes life back into him by transferring some of her power into him. And eventually she takes it back because, honestly, a kid with Vanya's abilities it's pretty frightening. But
especially if they already have special needs.
Especially if they're always special needs. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I guess the point I'm making is that Harlan gets her abilities, and so he's basically mini Vanya. They're connected. And the handler wants him too. But I mean, why would you need him or Vanya if you have a girl who can mirror anyone's flipping abilities? You have the ultimate force field. I mean, nobody can touch you because this girl can copy anything that's thrown at her. So that was really unrealistic and stupid to me. That was really dumb.
She's just greedy.
Yeah, she was greedy. But yeah, so Vanya using her powers though, and actually having control, and all the siblings bonding, and like Luther apologizing to her and her apologizing to everybody else. I love that. I love that they were all able to come together, and like at the end when she really needed them to go help her, to help Harlan, they all got in the car. That was that was great character development. It was natural. It wasn't forced. I thought that was pretty cool. Klaus starting a cult What'd you think about Messiah Klaus?
I could see it with Klaus. But it's not really suited for him as a career path, let's say.
Because he's got like a short attention span. Yeah. So like he's like, I want to save you, but now it's dinner time. But now I love that he tried to come clean and it made it worse. Like he literally was like, I'm a fraud, and everyone's like, I'm a fraud too in life. He's like, oh my God, that's not what I'm saying. You know, like they literally, his cult would not let him not be the Messiah of his cult. They literally, no matter what he asked, no matter what he did, they were gung-ho for, even involving sex swings. That was very weird, you know. But that's Klaus. Klaus is really crazy. But I love that we see more of his abilities. Like I like when he was falling, he's like, somebody help, and 2 ghost cowboys caught him. That was pretty cool, because that shows you how powerful Klaus really is. But I already knew he was, because they showed in the flashback when he brought Ben pretty much from the pivotal moment of going through the light, possibly to heaven, and then dragging his spirit back down to hang out with him for years. So he doesn't just talk to the dead. It almost seems like he controls the dead, and that is pretty cool. So yeah, there was a lot going on in season 2. And again, that was both good and bad, only because it felt like some of the stories were overlapping. And we didn't expand enough on it. Like Diego's father complex and wanting to be a superhero to prove daddy wrong and prove his worth is very true to the character, but it took it to an extreme. And I just wish that we had more time for him to really work on himself and not really prove his dad right the entire season. And that was pretty irritating. We did have Grace. Grace is a real person. So their mother actually existed. And since they're... Now, if you didn't know this in the comics, I'm sure you know by now. If you watch the series, you know that Sir Reginald is actually an alien. And he's from a planet that was devastated by war, like nuclear war. And that is why he is so scared of Vanya's ability, because she represents basically what destroyed his planet. She's a walking bomb. How he went about keeping her from using her powers, drugging her to not feel anything, penting up her emotions. That's not what you do with something that is a live charge. You don't build pressure so they explode. So he went about that completely wrong and making him actually a very big idiot. For such a smart man, he's dumb. But I do like the fact that he actually seemed to have emotions for Grace. And maybe that's what inspired him to build a robotic version, because she loved him. She's like, I can't wait for you to tell me the truth. You know, he was working with the Majestic 12, and they're basically the military, the scientists, and others, like political figures that they basically control what's going on in the world through weapons and technology. And JFK was a threat, so they wanted to take him out. But Sir Reginald did not want to do that. He did not want to take him out. And they basically made a deal. He would give them technology, and they would leave JFK alone, and they still assassinated him. And it actually led to him killing them. Sir Reginald killed all of them. But the interesting thing is, when all of his kids approached him about it, even when Grace approached him about it, he wouldn't tell them the truth. He's like, just trust me, you know. It's like, why don't you just come clean and say, I'm not down with what's happening. I don't want you to know about my business, but what's going on, I'm not down with. I'm not trying to kill the president. He didn't say any of that stuff. Even when she's looking at the evidence, the pictures, the maps and stuff, it made him look very guilty, and he didn't defend himself. So it's really interesting. It really shows you just how private and untrusting of a character Sir Reginald actually is, alien or not. He doesn't trust anyone. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with the Sparrow Academy, though. What the Reginald and that one's going to be like. Because, I mean, the fact that when they got there, he said, I've been waiting for you. That was a really interesting opening line. I'm hoping that this is going to turn out to be a battle like the New Mutants versus the Hellions in Marvel. That would be pretty cool. I don't know if it's going to be that way, but I'm really curious, because I love the fact that Ben's number 1, and I love the fact that they're going to have their own power sets and seem to be a more accepted team to Sir Reginald of their world than they were, the Umbrella Academy was to their dad. Mm-hmm. So that should be interesting. But yeah, I think I covered mostly everything besides loving the music. The soundtrack was really good. Anything else you can think of that we may have left out on this wonderful train ride of a series that we binged on one day, and we're probably like, I know you forget stuff. When you watch episodes back to back to back to back, you're going to forget something. It was 10 hours. So, 10 hours. I'm so loopy, I probably forgot a lot of the stuff that happened in this episode. But I overall really, really enjoyed it. I just felt like there were choices that could have been made that would have made it a little bit more believable. And one of the biggest issues for me was 5 and even with Diego, the different ways they could have tried to go home. And it didn't cross their mind, especially with 5, because 5's supposed to be so smart. He's technically 45 years older than them, and he's supposed to be brilliant. And he actually seemed like an idiot a lot of the time in this season. So that was my main complaint. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think. So please leave us a comment below and let us know. And if you would like to sign up for jury duty, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to know who's next on the Nerd Bell, hit the notification bell. Until next time, I can't wait for you to approach the nerd. Bye, guys.
Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it, but hey, the party doesn't have to stop now. Click on one of these videos and keep it going.